Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of What's for Supper on It's a Ootsy Thing. I appreciate you joining me. And tonight, what we're going to fix for supper, I've not ever made this before, but it looked really good, and I think it's going to be pretty yummy. It's beef and broccoli. It's a very simple recipe. As you see, all my recipes are pretty simple, and so that's what I'm having for supper this evening. I'll get my recipe around here. I'm going to tell you what I did. You can do this in your slow cooker and have your beef cooking through the day. I was at home all day today, so I just did it on low heat on the stove in my Dutch oven here. And I've switched things up just a little bit. So let me just tell you what's in the recipe, and then I will tell you how I changed it. It calls for 1.5 pound beef chuck roast. I didn't want to use a roast because I had some sirloin steak in my freezer that I wanted to get used up. So I altered it that way. So I'm using sirloin steak instead. And what it said, if you're going to use roast, to cut it in thin strips. Then it calls for a cup of beef broth, a half a cup of low sodium soy sauce, a third of a cup of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, and 3 garlic cloves minced up. So here's what I'm going to tell you that I did different. I put the sirloin steak in. I did use the cup of beef broth. I did the half a cup of soy sauce. I did a third of a cup of brown sugar, 1 tablespoon of sesame oil, and I did not do the garlic. I don't like a lot of garlic flavor in my stuff, so I don't. If it calls for garlic, I usually use less, but I just didn't even want the garlic. We had leftover soup today from the other day whenever I made white chicken chili, and it had garlic in it, and so I've had my fill of garlic. Now, what it says to do after you have cooked this, to make a thickening with some of the broth and cornstarch so that your broth will thicken up. And here's what I changed. I wanted to taste the meat to see how the flavoring was. And so I tasted a couple of pieces of meat. It was very bland, and I needed more flavor. So what I did is I took a package of brown gravy mix and some ranch seasoning, and I put the seasoning mix in there, or the gravy mix, and I just sprinkled some of the seasoning mix, maybe a teaspoon. I didn't do a whole lot, but I did a full package of the gravy mix. That has really helped the flavor. So since I did that, since I used the gravy mix, I am not going to do a thickening. It is, turn my heat back on. It is thickening up using that gravy mix. So I don't think I want to make it any thicker. So you can see here, it's definitely thicker than just broth. So I am not going to put any cornstarch in it. So now that this has been cooking all afternoon, my meat is very tender. I'm going to go ahead and put my broccoli in. It is not going to take very long at all for that broccoli to cook. One thing that you do want to be careful about, if you use a roast, you don't want your meat to be real shredded. You want chunks of meat for this recipe. So you can see it's chunks of meat. So this is a full head of broccoli that I'm going to be using. It will not take this long at all to cook. I'm going to serve this over rice, and so while this broccoli is cooking, it will be just a perfect amount of time for my rice. And I am using minute rice. I know there's going to be people that frown on that, but this is what I do. I say, you do you. You do what you feel works for you and your family. I will not condemn you one way or the other. If you do not like some of the ways I do things, that's okay. We are all made in our own special way, and we all do things the way we want to do it. And so I won't condemn you if you don't like the way I do something. You do it to where it works for you and your family. You will see that I do use sugar. I use flour. We eat bread. But I also try to use as much as I can that doesn't have chemicals in it, which I cannot get completely away from that. I do what works for me. So I have never claimed for this channel to be a healthy channel. We just do good Southern cooking. And this is what works for my husband and I. And we're happy with it. So you can see here, this broccoli is just going to cook nicely. And we don't want it mushy at all. So I'm going to turn that heat down just a little bit, and I'm going to get my rice going.